Well, welcome everybody. This is John Palmer, Dutch Speed Selling, and this is the Raging Verbalist number 273. Amazing we've gotten this far. So I'm glad if you're out there, if you're new, welcome. If you have been with us a while, appreciate you coming back. Of course, always hit the like button. Always the like. Why wouldn't you like it? Subscribe doesn't cost you anything, does help us. And notifications if you want to be annoyed. You can check us out on YouTube or our Facebook group, which is Position to Win Book, and all of that. And of course, don't veer off into politics much, but we talk about a variety of different topics, something that tops my chart, hits my top of my noodle. Anyway, and for the person who asked the questions, who would be standing in for you is the ever lovely Sandra. Welcome, Sandra.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing great. Excited about this. Obviously, it's each week we don't know what's going to happen, and we are living in pretty wild times. I can tell you that.
That's right. So, with that, we're talking about has the status quo changed? So, tell us, what do you mean by the status quo?
So when you look around and you see what's accepted as norms, what is right, what's wrong, what's possible, what's not possible. So the status quo has changed over time. What was once deemed inappropriate is now appropriate, or a topic you couldn't talk about. And especially in today's world, status quo is going through a lot of upheaval, and there's lots of competing interests that goes on. So the status quo is kind of like where we're at as a society, as a group, and this is also fragmented somewhat, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
So, where was it?
Well, it used to be this whole generational thing, the discussion of the generation gap, and you had all of the demographics, and you have all these different generations, the baby boomers all the way up to Gen Z, and I guess we're now into Gen Alpha. I guess we're going to have to start, coming up with new things to call them. And it always was this generational gap, what was considered appropriate, or what was considered regular, what considered this is the norm, changes over time. Well, that's happening at a faster pace than ever before. uh, this always was a reference point, something that you could know was going to work from, but now a bunch of those things are gone, and that this is why there are so many conflicts that exist today. I believe now, are they real or imagined? I think that sometimes people get like way over the top on what they think this means, like, well, the whole world is going to hell, and where are we going to all be? But you know and then the biggest thing is that the barrier to knowing what's going on around the world has changed dramatically. You can literally talk to somebody anywhere for almost zero, or maybe zero if you're using something like WhatsApp. So we have a sense that the globe is getting smaller, but things are not you know equalized. It just keeps rolling along.
And how does it look today?
Giant moving target, in my opinion. And because it's a moving target and it is so fractured, it has so many different things. There was a guy named George Santayana who emphasized the importance of learning from the past. And he basically said those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Some ways we're seeing some of that today. And then also how over the top people get. There's a lot of, obviously, we've called them before, one issue voters. Well, those people are just even over the top further. And all I can say is that it looks like we are in a sea of chaos right now. And maybe that's why we're talking about this, because what was once the status quo, what was once this is how we know that we've touched that center point. Well, that's gone out the window, and it's gone out the window in such a way that I think that it's made people feel like, well, we're out of control. And I don't think we're out of control, but what we are is we have different points of control. And that means that we are seeing a lot of tribalism, balkanization. And in some ways, it's kind of ironic because we have more ways to interact than ever before, but we cling to the group that we believe and trust in more than ever before.
And how do you balance the access to more information than we ever had, and on the other hand, the massive number of people who can't do basic things?
It's astonishing if you look at like the LA County School District. largest school district in the United States, by the way. And the number of students who cannot read at their grade level or perform math at their grade level or write at their grade level. A couple hundred years ago, there were arguments and there were fights about whether or not you should teach the underclass how to read and write and do math and all of that. And it seems like today we have more of that than ever before, that you can get access to material. And the internet, in some ways, fosters this. Is that good? Is it bad? I think it's pretty good, but well, only a small number of people could actually read a couple hundred years ago. But today, the number of people who can read is actually growing smaller. And there are a lot of people who, and it is, and it's they can't and won't is in two different categories. There are a lot of people who won't read, and I think part of that is that they can go watch a video, listen to audio. In fact, the books that we have written, Gabe and I, people always ask me, well, can I get an audible version? Can I have that? Well, we haven't gone to that level yet. I mean, we'd have to have to think through that long and hard. But it's really just, this kind of institutional failure. Because if you don't have a populace, if you don't have a society that are built upon people who can actually discern what's going on, then I think that they make bad decisions and they are easily swayed. They will listen to just about anybody, and they have no way to actually figure out what's going on or not going on. I think that's a troubling trend. And I think that in that regard, the status quo is going further south and actually getting better. South meaning that it's, going from the good to the bad. Now, if you don't want to go from the good to the bad and you're in business, I can tell you that one of the things that you absolutely should do, and I'm going to tell you that I'm a biased guy because, of course, is pick up my book. Most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it. Position to win. Uh, the most important decision you're going to make in a business is done very, very early on, and you have to live with that decision forever. Now, you can pick it up physically from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, wherever books are sold. You can go in and ask for this book by its title, or you can go to our website, positiontowinbook.com, pick it up. And if you go buy it directly from us, you can actually get it inscribed by me, and I'll put something in there that is memorable for you. Also, you can go and pick up the book, and you can get it electronically, digitally, whatever way you want to think about it, bits instead of atoms. And you can do that by going to Amazon Kindle, uh, Barnes and Noble Nook, or Apple iBooks. On the other hand, if you want to do what we're doing now, which is doing things remotely, you can pick up Remote Work for a Better World, and hopefully you'll actually get more productivity out of it. It is a sad circumstance, a sad situation, in my opinion. How many people are not really functioning well enough to be able to work at home, and then you have massive failures of this? Shouldn't be. I mean, it should be a liberating thing and a way to actually get more done and connect with people. I do have several virtual businesses, and they do quite well because of that. And then, of course, for a little bit of a respite, who wouldn't want to have a Raging Verbalist mug, your very own Raging Verbalist mug? So that way, when you get up in the morning, you have a little bit of Raging Verbalist with you every single day. All right, Sandra, what's our next question? What are we going to talk about?
All right, so is this the new norm?
It seems to be. It seems like we have billions of people who really can't function. And the question is this going to aid in our development? Are we going to have a more of a 80-20 principle, 80-20, 80-20, 80-20, where really just the top 4% or whatever it is are going to be super successful? What will these other people do? I can tell you that AI and robots and all of these technologies are coming. There are people who say, no, it's not. I will assure you that the last time I rented a Tesla when I was in Dallas and said it, and this did not have full self-driving, but the way that that car could handle traffic situations, best cruise control I ever saw, was able to keep us in the lanes. I just see that technology is going to keep improving. But the question is are people going to be saying, I'm lazy, it doesn't matter, so I don't really need to do that? I think that's sad. Loss of human potential is a very, very dangerous thing in my mind, because you'll have a whole bunch of people who do not really function to the level that they could, and therefore they're not as capable as they should be.
And will people start to use technology to think for them?
Well, what happens is it's called externalization. So we just have technology make decisions for us. We have things that take place. Now, in a lot of ways, I guess this is a good thing, but in other ways, I think it's kind of a sad thing. Peter Drucker years ago, and I got to see him discuss this live, is that we have access to data. The internet is just filled with lots and lots and lots of data. Now, the question is how do we take that data and step it up in value and make it more understandable? And that's going to a phase called information. So we go from data to information. That's important because information is more powerful. I mean, data is the if data is the new oil. I know some of you are like, ooh, oil, ooh. But we live off of oil. We're a society that lives off of this. The whole world is dependent upon it. But oil in its crudest form is not as useful as you might think. It takes a transformation that goes through in a refining process, and that's where we convert data to information. So essentially, we're stripping out the things that don't matter and looking for things that do. But more importantly, what we need to do is we need to get to a point of being knowledgeable. Most of the stuff that people spew and talk about on any channel you want to listen to, usually it's informational, not knowledge based. And you always want to drive if you want to become more successful. And hopefully that's why you're listening. That's why we're connecting with you, is that you want to develop this mindset of I need to gather the data, I need to transform it into usable information, but more importantly, I need to be able to think it through and turn it into knowledge, because once it becomes knowledge, then that's where power comes from. So if you want to know how to become more successful in life, I'm going to tell you right now, strive to become knowledgeable and develop a knowledge mindset.
And can you give us a couple examples of getting to be a knowledgeable person?
For those of you who won't have the opportunity, and I'm going to say this will be most of you, Sandra's mom makes incredible cookies. I mean, these things could solve world problems, I think.
Agreed.
But there's no way to get the recipe out of her. Well, part of it is the fact that she learned this recipe, years and years ago, and so she gathered the data, if you will. Okay, I'm going to make cookies. Then that got transferred to information, which would be one would consider a recipe. But Sandra's mama doesn't have to do that because she has knowledge, and that knowledge allows her to bake those cookies with surprising continuity. And all I can tell you is they are amazingly good. But that is an example of somebody who does that. Now there's always a gap between data and information and knowledge. So you got to think about what those gaps are, because you need to convert it to this higher level and higher level and higher level. And that's just one example. Now, someday maybe we'll find a way to extract this knowledge and turn it into something useful for mankind. It could, in fact, solve many crises around the world if everybody just had one of those cookies. But that to me is an example of somebody who took data, took information, and absorbed it and converted it into knowledge. And she just has that. And that's really an important aspect of any part of your life. We use this example specifically because people usually talk in tech terms, but this is true of everything in your life, is that you want to become a knowledge person, a knowledge worker, as Drucker coined the phrase. But more importantly, is you want to, and this is the key bonus, is you want to document that, so that way it is something that can be passed on to future generations, because one does not want to think that that cookie recipe is going to have a expiration date to it.
And can you give me an example from your own life?
Well, I had a great interest in cars, and my friend Mickey who was my original business partner. And Mickey had this great idea that he was going to buy an older car and fix it up. And eventually he went out and became a master mechanic. So let me just say he had an aptitude. So he buys a 1939 Chevy, and it was a four door, and it ran, but had some issues and problems. And he decided that one year, what he really needed to do was rewire the car. Now, if you've ever seen what wiring looks like inside of a car, most people don't, because they hide the wiring so people can't screw it up. Cars today have lots and lots and lots of wire. It's just amazing. A 39 Chevrolet did not. So we buy the wire kit from JC Whitney Company, and it comes in a big ass box, and it comes with a crudely copied example of the wiring harness for a 1939 Chevy. And I'm sure that, had parts, maybe if this was all the documentation, I would be surprised. And we spent the better part of a few weeks rewiring this car. Well, all I can say is, we really needed a lot more because we had the data, we had the parts, maybe we even had some information about it. There was no internet to go look it up. And my father and his father sat in two lawn chairs with the beer cooler between them, watching us work our asses off trying to rewire a car, which we eventually did. Like I said, he had a great deal of capability. I had more of a wannabe, but I can tell you that I learned a lot, and I learned that what we really needed is we needed to go through a checklist. So today, if something doesn't work in a car, this is why technology has changed everything. I know some people say, geez, I wish it was like the old days. Yeah, that's more nostalgia because you have to go through a checklist to figure out what's wrong or not. Taught me a lot of things, by the way. I mean, I really got a great understanding of how you need to have knowledge to be able to accomplish some of the tasks. So whenever somebody says to you via the internet, three simple lessons and it's all done and all you're going to have to do and you're going to be, well, yeah, they're probably just telling you a bunch of bullshit.
And how do you apply this if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, or in sales?
Well, if you're a business owner, or an entrepreneur, let's talk about it from that perspective. And what happens is that we believe that the way the world is the way the world is. Recently, Elon Musk had a bonus package that was due him from Tesla Corporation, and this guy brought a lawsuit, a shareholder lawsuit. Understand that's the way it works. A Delaware judge, even though this guy owned, is my understanding, nine shares. I've owned more than nine shares in my life of Tesla. And he sued and said, well, I don't think that this is in the best interest of the shareholders. I think the board was too cozy, all of that. Well, the status quo is that, you know, big companies are incorporated in Delaware. This has been going on for a long time. In fact, a large percentage of the Delaware tax revenue, like 25%, which is a huge number, comes from what are called franchise fees from corporations. Well, Delaware judge decided that Elon didn't deserve the payment package, the bonus package, and negated it. So Elon put it to a vote, and the shareholders voted like 3-1. 75% voted yes, that they wanted him to have the package. Went back to the judge, and the judge said, nope, nope, don't care about the shareholders. Now, that I don't believe is correct, but see, that has now become the status quo. And great on her that she did that, in the sense that now he has now moved all of his corporations, which was absolutely unheard of all the years that I've been in business. I mean, having people move where they're incorporated is like a big deal. I mean, even if you're a little poquito tiny company, but he moved the whole damn thing out of Delaware. And that means that since the status quo is changing, the point of the story is that if you're in a situation and you need to do a change and you need to do something, I learned from my turnaround days, all options should be on the table and available to you, because just because you've done it before a certain way doesn't mean that you have to do that in the future. It is more open today. There are more options today, and have a mindset that's open to that. Because if you do, what you'll not become is a victim of the status quo, because see, oftentimes the status quo can trap us in bad decisions and bad things that we really could just give up on and move to some other. In his case, he's moving to Texas, so he gets to wear the big hat. And with that, I just want to thank you for joining us here on the Raging Verbalist. Hopefully, you've gotten some insights and you're not going to think of the status quo as being this fixed point, because it's definitely a moving object. And for myself, John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Sally, and the ever lovely Sandra, this has been the Raging Verbalist number 273. And we look forward to seeing you on the next Raging Verbalist.